want to talk a little bit about the future of App Store optimization as we see it at Gummicube and cover a few topics. And I think first, it's hard to talk about the future until you delve a little bit into the past and understand how we got here. And I think there are still some pretty important points that people forget about ASO because some tools don't address them or they're just not part of methodologies, and they're actually very, very important. So, first, just to establish why I'm up here on stage, we have been doing this since the very beginning. My co-founder and I were one of the first people on iPhone Dev SDK talking about, hey, how do we rank better in search? And in a little basement kind of garage in Silicon Valley, we started building one of the very first tools for ASO. And mind you, this was when if you were to Google ASO, you would get airplane parts manufacturers as the result. So this did not exist as a practice yet. And we had to kind of build it up. Back then and today, there are a few core ASO components that people focus on. There's search, there's conversion. Within that, you have keywords, you have descriptions, titles, kind of all these things that you know about. But I think the challenge is a lot of times when people are executing ASO, there are some things that they really forget about. At this point, many years later, it kind of seems basic what the metadata fields are. But there's a lot that could hurt you if you're not doing it right that you don't know about. The first thing, a lot of times, people are optimizing keywords and metadata. They're like, well, we rank for some keywords. Why do we need to keep doing this? Well, Apple and Google actually both have a relevance score. Apple literally calls it a relevance score. And Apple and Google devalue content as it gets older. So when you look at kind of them crawling you and why it's important to kind of update your metadata every 30 days, it's because the older your content is, the less relevant it is to an algorithm. And so gradually, rankings will decline over time if you're not updating it or if your competitors start converting better than you over time. The other conversation that I always have is with brands. And I feel like with ASO in particular, brands really need to be on high alert because a lot of times you have these different departments that might be in charge of creative or messaging, and it involves a lot of people to change what's on the store listing. And I just think it's really important to kind of break those barriers down because we're not building a box that's going to sit on the shelf of Best Buy for a year or whatever your electronics store is. This is a digital store. If it's not updated, if we're not catering to what consumers are essentially voting for with their clicks, it is impossible to be successful. It doesn't matter how strong your brand is within a market. We're always trying to educate our customers not just about how to do ASO, but how to build their teams right as well. And one of the things that we've really started to dive into is why it's important to have teams that fully manage everything on the App Store. There should be one person in charge of that entire page and people that support them. Just like, if you look at the difference between acquisition and engagement, there should be unification between acquisition and engagement teams because what you learn as you're A/B testing a store listing absolutely 100% carries through to what you should be learning about how to make a better onboarding flow and the messaging that you should use and the creative that works and all of those things. So ASO is holistic to whatever extent you can. Don't departmentalize it too much, right? There should be some degree of central control on your store listing. The other thing that we always hear about as well, I A/B test all the time. I've run 20 tests, only one has worked, and even that only incrementally. Well, one of the reasons that a lot of CR approaches fail is because a lot of people only look at your store listing conversion. Everyone talks about this metric that started on the Google Play Store. What is my store listing conversion? The reality is you also have to understand what Apple and Google measure. Apple and Google, when they're ranking an app or deciding where to place an app on a programmatic list on their store, look at the click to download rate within that search result or on that list. They're not actually looking at your store listing conversion rates. And so, if you talk to someone who's willing to talk to you at Apple and Google, they'll say, look at your impression to download rate, look at your impression to tap rate within search or for the group of keywords you care about, because that's going to determine whether you rise or fall in the rankings, not your store listing conversion rate. We always think, you look at your store listing, that's incredibly important for your own traffic. It's incredibly important for your paid traffic. But you have to pay attention when it comes to organics about how you're converting as people are browsing and searching the store as well. App quality is also really important. I realized I hadn't addressed this in a few years, actually, as I was talking, and the more I talk to clients, the more I realize people aren't focusing on it anymore. Apple and Google do actually crawl the content in your user reviews, and when keywords are mentioned frequently in those user reviews, you get a higher relevancy score for those keywords. So it's important that you focus on how you're prompting users to leave reviews. It's important we're understanding what users are saying, because that's also an indicator what you might have higher relevance for if you're targeting keywords. The other thing I think that's important about reviews and ratings is that effectively it's the one kind of what I call off-page element that's important for ASO. There are some tools out there that, for example, have functionality to do backlinks, right, for Google Play and look at what websites are linking to your store listing page. That doesn't matter. Apple and Google do not look at that. And the reason some tools have that is because a lot of SaaS companies ask their customers what they want, and they start building those features. And they don't validate whether it works. They're just building features that their customers are asking for. And unfortunately, some of their customers might actually be wrong about how ASO works. And then they go and promote the tool, and everyone starts doing it the wrong way. Backlinks, things that exist outside the store, not really important in terms of what you rank for and how Apple and Google work. There are a lot of enhancing factors for ASO that I think people aren't taking advantage of. New things that have evolved over the last couple of years where you can really get better distribution in the stores. Store ads, I think, is the most common one that people are familiar with, right? If you're buying Apple search ads, for some reason, some of your keywords start ranking better. Well, the reason for that isn't just because you're spending money. It's because Apple is essentially aggregating all of the click and conversion data in their store. And because Apple runs those ads inside their store, if they know you convert well on a keyword, they might start merchandising you in similar places. So it's kind of an indirect merchandising effect that happens because of your conversion rates within store ads. Now, there's a lot of falsehoods that exist out there. But first, we're going to talk about what's true. One, search ads can be useful in a lot of ways. Can give you information about your tap-through rates, your conversion rates on a per keyword basis. You can't get that organically. And as I said, keywords that convert when you're buying them in search ads, those conversion rates send Apple signals that you're relevant, right? And that's what might help your organic keywords rank a little better. However, simply buying ads isn't going to improve your conversion rate. You still have to do real ASO. You still have to A/B test. You still have to leverage custom product pages, because if you're not doing that, you're just spending a lot of money to kind of hide a problem that you haven't really solved in terms of not converting really well or not being relevant for a particular keyword. Here are the false things. I oftentimes hear media agencies say search ads is ASO. Just run search ads, that will solve your ASO problems. That's BS, that's not true. Anyone who actually has done mobile marketing for a long time knows that's not true. And if that's the solution that someone is pitching you for ASO, run and don't walk, because that's not the right answer. Two, focusing on keywords that are popular in paid search because they get you organic downloads. Well, that's not really true either, right? You know, a popularity score is something that comes within a dashboard Apple gives you to run an SEM campaign. It's not an ASO tool, right? And when you look at the data that feeds into search ads popularity scores, it doesn't just include search volume for keywords. It includes, does Apple have inventory? What are your tap-through rates? How are you relevant? It communicates kind of all those things so that Apple can get you to buy keywords that are relevant for your app that also have inventory to buy. Paid and organic search volumes, as they're communicated by popularity, aren't always the same. And also, the reason that you would target something for ASO is different than the reason you target something for search ads. ASO is long-term, and it also involves how Apple and Google merchandise you through the stores, which is long-term. You're looking at what are the seasonal shifts that happen? What are the keywords related to my features? And how do I shift my metadata over time to get Apple and Google to merchandise me in all the right areas of the store? Search ads is short-term, right? It's like the difference between a long-term strategy to invest in the stock market versus a short-term day trading strategy, right? So you need to understand what that data means and how Apple intends you to use it versus how a lot of ASO tools or agencies might tell you you should use it for ASO. Oftentimes, that advice isn't correct. When you look at kind of the last factor here, downloads that within search ads and the share of voice that you can achieve in search ads, being an indicator about organic volumes, what you have to remember is that when you're running Apple search ads, if Apple doesn't find you relevant for a keyword, you might have a keyword that's very popular with a lot of volume and your bid might be very high, but Apple may intentionally send you less traffic. And because of that, you might make a very bad decision about whether that keyword is important for ASO if you're just looking at that and kind of using that as advice about what keywords to select. So in terms of, actually one other point I want to make, and I think this is really important. Apple and Google, with a few exceptions for a few keywords in the Google Play Console, do not tell people how many downloads happened on an organic keyword. Anytime you see that data in an ASO tool, it is like a unicorn. People wish it exists, but it does not exist. And usually that data comes from Apple search ads. They're saying, well, we've seen apps that bid on these keywords, and when they bid on these keywords, they get a certain number of downloads. So again, in superimposing SEM data on organic, which is I don't understand why anyone would want to do that. It does not make sense once you actually look at the data. So a lot of underutilized factors in addition to kind of leveraging search ads the right way. One, I really encourage our customers to think about deep linking and how to use it. Universal links can be very important. Finding organic distribution outside of the store can be very important, and deep links, depending on the content that you have in your app, can get you there. I think if you've been following Google's antitrust trial, which many people have, it's very, very clear that Apple thinks this is how they kind of beat Google, right? They get people to use Spotlight search on the phone. So to the extent that we can use Spotlight's APIs, to the extent we can leverage deep linking, we can take advantage of what Apple thinks is one of their most important kind of features and technologies. Now, in addition to deep linking, I mentioned Spotlight earlier. Spotlight, for me, when I think about it, is one of the most critical steps toward re-engaging users. Not just acquisition, it can help with acquisition if your content has been indexed, but re-engagement is also important. Because when a user installs an app on their phone and they start searching for things, even things that are inside your app, they'll start recommending all of that content to users when they're searching. And when people are using Spotlight, they're also being presented with other apps in the store. So you want to make sure that your content gets in front of those users and people come back and re-engage. Spotlight's a really important way to do that. 3, Siri and app intents. So to the extent that you can leverage this new app intent feature that that Apple recently announced, we have the ability to actually allow people to directly access features in our app using Siri callouts. And this can also help with engagement. It can also help with discoverability. So we encourage people to leverage this because once you acquire a user, you want to make sure that they come back to the app. These new features are a big way to do that. For subscription-based apps, we're also looking at App Store promotions, right? So whenever we have a subscription, how can we line up the right metadata and make sure that our partners are promoting those subscriptions in the store? One thing that a lot of people don't realize is Apple is actually indexing some of this metadata. It's actually helping you rank for keywords the same way that when you do an in-app event, it helps you rank for keywords. And so we want to make sure that we're doing all of the right things around subscription and App Store promotions. So now the future. What's coming in the future? So one, as many people here know, Gummicube and Airship recently merged together because we believe the future is not just App Store optimization, it's app optimization. And what that means is after the download, after you've acquired all these great users, you want to optimize and A/B test your onboarding flow. You want to optimize and A/B test all of those user journeys, and you want to leverage the data from ASO so that you can perform better and learn from all of those winning A/B tests. One, in the store, in addition to kind of on that theme, we think the first step toward re-engagement is understanding how to leverage in-app events and promos inside the App Store and Play Store. These are really critical because when you have a user who's already downloaded the app, they're taking away your screenshots. They're taking away your creative assets that are in the store. If you've ever searched for your own app that you have in the store that you've already downloaded, Apple's just showing an icon and a title, not the screenshots anymore. In-app events give you a way to take that creative back, give you a space to put a banner and promote your app or promote a feature or a special event going on inside. And that way, when a user swipes and they do Spotlight search to find the app they've already installed, and Apple happens to send them back into the store for one reason or another, those users are more likely to re-engage with what they've already downloaded versus, for example, downloading a competitor because they see a cool screenshot or a feature that they like. The other thing about in-app events, is Apple really does index this content. So if you write this content the right way, thinking about ASO, you will rank for more keywords and build relevancy. It's a way to actually expand what you rank for in the store. Custom product pages and store listings are important, particularly when we think about, like for me, particularly when I think about web funnels, they can be important. We work with a lot of big news organizations, and if you're covering sports and local and politics, as an example, and users are coming from your website, you want to send them to landing pages that are relevant for those topics, not just a generic web page. And with CPPs and CSLs, you can do that. You can make your earned traffic important. You can make your owned traffic perform better. And for traffic that you're leveraging from Apple search ads, for example, yes, these can be useful for A/B testing and segmentation, but also think about how you can leverage them if you have any traffic coming from the web. Lots to avoid. We want to keep up with compliance dates. We want to understand what Apple and Google are rejecting from a promotional perspective. We want to make sure that our offers are going to kind of pass the test when we do submissions to Apple and Google. But these things, they tend to be fairly well known. Sometimes you do submissions and, you get a random rejection because the reviewer kind of rolled out of the bed on the wrong side and didn't understand what you were trying to do. But just think about the spirit of Apple and Google's rules. Try to follow that, but these can be important. We also want to, of course, as I mentioned, test inside the app. We have ways to do that. Really, really think about the onboarding flows. Really think about the viral flows in your app. Really think about the flows where you're asking people to monetize and how you can A/B test that and how you can learn from what you do on the ASO side to feed into that process. So finally, takeaways, right? Pay attention to the fundamentals. The fundamentals are still important. Remember, you do want to update your metadata every 30 days. Even if you think you already rank for the keywords that are important, if it's not updated regularly, you are less relevant, and you're going to rank less well over time. Your store is not the only place you need to worry about conversion rates. You need to think about the search and browse and explore experience as well. And just think about what matters and what doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what tool you use, but a lot of the features in a tool were requested by people that may or may not have proved out their theories about what works. Just because a tool has backlinks in it doesn't mean that actually helps you or that it's correct. Store ads enhance, but they should not drive your ASO, right? Totally, ignore people that are going to tell you, hey, the more you spend on search ads, that should be your ASO driver, or Google ads on the Google side. That does not make sense. And just keep in mind, the future of ASO is about before and after the download, right? It's really about understanding how do we unify teams, because sometimes the acquisition team and the retention teams aren't the same, but how do we unify these teams to share learnings with each other and A/B test everything so that we make more money, we get more value, and we deliver more value to the users that we're acquiring. Thank you.